You're listening to The Shift Show with Adriana Bucci. I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery coach and the person who's going to tell you what everyone else is too polite to say. We're talking all things narcissists, narcissistic parents, toxic relationships, the aftermath, and what healing actually looks like. And no, you are not the crazy one. Let's dive into it. Hello and welcome back to The Shift Show. As promised in my Enablers episode, the last one, we're going to do an episode today on how to deal with a narcissist. And I know I promised 3 other episodes as well in the previous episode: gray rocking, narcissistic supply, and boundaries with narcissists. So stay tuned. They are on my list to record next. But right now, let's talk about how to deal with a narcissist. A lot of people online will say to just go no contact. That's cool. That's, not necessarily helpful for everybody. Not everyone can necessarily go no contact. If you can, if you don't share children with the narcissist, if you have no assets that you share with the narcissist that you would have to go through court and all that kind of shit to deal with before going no contact, if you don't have to deal with any of that, 1,000% go no contact, save your life. But it's easier said than done, obviously, and that would be step 5. So let's talk about, the steps before no contact, because most people can't just, snap their fingers and disappear. And just a quick disclaimer that if you are in any sort of physical danger, this episode is not for that. If you are, being violently threatened, if your physical safety is in jeopardy, you need to get the fuck out and call law enforcement and get legal help. I cannot help you with that. What we're talking about in this episode is narcissistic and emotional abuse and how to navigate it. And, getting out is always ideal, but at the end of the day, easier said than done. But if it's physical danger, if they are threatening you physically, if they are striking you, if they have ever put their hands on you, you need to get the fuck out and you need to get, the police involved, because a podcast episode is not going to help you with that. Now that that disclaimer is out of the way, let's start with step 1. Step 1 is you have to accept and radically accept that they will not change. And no one wants to hear this, because it's really hard to accept that this person you love and care about, this might be your mother, right? Like, you want to believe that there's good in everyone and they can change, and, maybe they're going to have this light bulb moment because I explained it well enough. That is not going to happen, okay? Maybe they've had a few moments of like lucidity where it seemed like they were going to change or they were being reasonable for once. That was all manipulation. Okay? And the reason that this whole thing is so confusing, and I tell my clients all the time, if you are confused, you are being abused. And it's confusing because they're not awful 100% of the time. If they were, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be wasting your time listening to this. You would know exactly who they are. You would have gotten the fuck out. There would be absolutely no confusion. But with a narcissist, they can be great a lot of the time. And that's the manipulation. That's what you have to understand is part of the abuse. And it's part of the cycle of abuse. It's love bombing. Love bomb, devalue, discard. That is the cycle of narcissistic abuse. And that is all you have to look forward to with this person. And love bombing does not have to be this big grand gesture. It can literally be they're being nice for 5 minutes. They're making sense for once. They are agreeing with you. They're pretending to take some form of accountability, which is very rare. And, obviously history repeats itself, and that's how you know it was bullshit. And so you have to understand that if they were horrible every single day with no breaks, you would have left already, and they know that. And they can sense when you're pulling away, and that is exactly when the love bombing starts. Okay? And this is not your fault. This is literally just the textbook cycle of abuse, and it is not your job to fix this person or point out the error in their ways or, try to make them change or whatever. And if you do that, you're going to be wasting so much time, and time is the only resource that we can't get back in this life. So think about that and ask yourself, like, do I want to continue wasting my time in this way? And hopefully that's a no. So that's step number one, radical acceptance. This person is not going to change. If you haven't accepted this, then it's going to be really difficult for you to move on to step two. So if you're still working on accepting that this person's never going to change, pause this episode and then come back and we can continue, because nothing is going to land if you still believe that there's some magical combination of words you can say or some way that you can, become a pretzel and twist yourself around in order for them to stop abusing you. It's absolutely not going to happen. So let's move on to step number two. So step two, once you've accepted that this person's not going to change, step two is to gray rock. But before we talk about gray rocking, I need to quickly tell you what the narcissist's goal is. And we're going to have a whole episode about this in the very near future, so stay tuned. It's going to be called Narcissistic Supply or something like that. It'll have that in the title, so you'll know what it is. But their goal is narcissistic supply. That is your emotional reaction, your time, your energy, your resources, your words, your participation and engagement in their hours-long conversations that go nowhere and leave you more confused. Basically, any energy and effort and attention that you exert towards the narcissist is what they are feeding off of. And it sounds insane, right? Doesn't this sound so weird? Because you would never do this to somebody. You've never even thought of having a goal of like, oh, I get my jollies when I see this person running around like a headless chicken in a state of emotional distress. Like that's how I get my kicks in life, right? But that is a narcissist's mentality. So you have to understand that first and foremost. And so this is where the gray rocking is going to start making sense. So basically, like the only kind of boundary you need to have with a narcissist is reducing how much supply you're giving them. So, don't waste your time talking to them. Don't try to make your point to them. Don't give them your energy or your attention, right? And so gray rocking is basically where you just become a gray rock. Like your personality is super boring, like a gray rock. You become the most boring person they've ever encountered. One word answers. You didn't have a good day. You didn't have a bad day. You had a day. You don't really have opinions on anything. You don't tell them about the drama. You don't tell them about the good stuff either, because they will ruin the good stuff on purpose. Okay? And so you have to really like channel your inner brick wall and not give them many words, like one word answers. And just ask yourself, like, what would the most boring person on earth say right now? And say that. Or even better, what would a brick wall say right now? And say that, which is nothing. Okay, and this is also going to be how you deal with enablers and flying monkeys and anybody who's really like in the narcissist's orbit. Less is more. You have to go on an information diet with these people, because the more you share, the more words you give them, the more weapons they have. Okay, which brings us to step three, do not engage. So actually, wait, let's go back to step two, gray rock, because a lot of people complain that the gray rock method doesn't work because the narcissist gets worse. Guess what? That means it's working, okay? That is predictable narcissistic behavior. You have taken away what they feel entitled to when you're gray rocking, right? You're not giving them that emotional reaction. You're not giving them that energy and that attention, right? These are energy vampires that we're dealing with. And you've taken away their blood, right? So they are going to, they're not going to let that go without putting up a fight. So they're going to get more obnoxious. They're going to say more triggering things to you. And it's really just to continue getting that reaction out of you. So you have to stick to your guns and stay a gray rock. Because if you don't, and you cave because they say that one thing that you shared with them in confidence that you didn't want them to talk about or whatever, you're literally teaching them how much pressure they need to put on you in order to get you to break. Okay, so now let's go to step 3 of don't engage. And, this really is when the gray rock, quote unquote, isn't working. It is working. And they're coming at you anyway. You have to expect that this is going to happen. Okay, so you can just like agree with them and move on. It sounds counterintuitive because I'm sure you really want to stand up for yourself, but there's no point. There is no point. You're just wasting your time and you're going to be more exhausted anyways. So, yeah, you're right. I'm a piece of shit. Anyways, how about the weather? Right? And like just watch how fast that ends the conversation. And you have to really also radically accept that you're never going to win an argument with a narcissist because at the end of the day, even if everything they're saying is bullshit, even if you come with receipts that disproves everything they're saying, they're still going to die on that hill that like you're this horrible person or whatever. Like it doesn't even matter that they're not right. All that matters to them is getting your reaction. So when you are proving yourself to them and you're engaging with them, you're giving them a reaction. And so the goal, if you really want to deal with a narcissist properly, is to not give it to them. Like, do not react, do not engage. And so if you are not living with the narcissist, we can get into step 4. Okay, if you are living with them, basically easier said than done, but long story short, figure out how to become independent of this person and get away. Might take several years, but brainstorming today, if you start brainstorming today, think about like where you'll be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. If you don't start brainstorming today and you allow things to just keep going as they've been going, you're probably going to be in the exact same spot a year from now, 10 years from now. So, like just keep that in mind. And maybe you're married to a narcissist and you haven't even thought about divorcing them yet or whatever. You're going to have to gray rock. If you and then hopefully you will get the courage to leave this person because you are allowed to have a good life. But that's another conversation. If you are living with a narcissistic parent, like if you're still a minor, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot you can do till you turn 18. If you're over the age of 18 and living with a narcissistic parent, you have to figure out how to get yourself independent. Do not share your salary with them. Do not, give them any money if possible, right? Like my narcissistic mother would charge me rent and I had no idea that that wasn't normal. And she literally did it to keep me stuck at home, living with her, paying her, being her cash cow until like I was 27 and finally had the courage to move out for the second time. That might be another podcast episode in the future. But anyways, I have a whole bunch I still have to make, so we'll get to that eventually. But you have to figure out how to get out. And if you literally can't, like if you are disabled and you rely on them, they're your primary caregiver or whatever, then you have to, like, gray rock is really your only option. And I would strongly encourage you to just like look into what your rights are based on your specific situation and see what can be done. Anyways, that was step 3. Now let's go into step 4. So low contact would be step 4. And this, really works if you don't physically live with the narcissist. This can also, back to step 3, if the narcissist is a coworker, you can kind of be low contact with them. Like literally the only words you say to them is just business only, and try to have everything in writing. Now let's get to step 4 for real, low contact. So this is assuming that you don't live with a narcissist and they're just like, maybe you're not ready for no contact yet. So you're going to answer less, you're going to respond slower, make fewer plans with them. And again, if you live with them, you could be sort of low contact, but you're going to really have to gray rock until you can physically remove yourself from the situation. And like I said, if you're financially trapped, start making a quiet plan, figure out how to get a second income, savings they don't know about, whatever it takes. And again, if this takes time, that's fine, because it takes time for a lot of people. But low contact is literally selective communication. And the most important part about low contact is you have to be emotionally detached, which really boils back to step 1 of radical acceptance that they will not change, right? Because when you're so emotionally invested in every single word they say, they will be able to bamboozle you from going low contact into full enmeshed contact. So you have to take your emotions out of the equation, and that requires doing inner work, obviously. If you don't know where to start, check out the link in the description wherever you're seeing or listening to this podcast, and I have a bunch of resources and ways to work with me and all that great stuff if you want support on emotionally detaching, because emotions are everything at the end of the day, and narcissists use your emotions against you. So if you're still emotionally invested in this person when you're low contact, you're going to have a really hard time maintaining that low contact. And you're going to notice that the cycle just keeps repeating itself over and over and over again. And like I said before, that is all you have to look forward to with this person. Okay, now let's get into step 5, which is no contact. That is the ultimate goal in a lot of cases, not necessarily possible in every single case, but low contact can eventually become no contact if you keep going. Because at the end of the day, like, you are now so boring to the narcissist. You're barely giving them anything. You're not giving them any supply. You're only responding if you have to, and your responses are very short, and you're very, low drama, so to speak, and they don't like that. So chances are they might discard you. And if that happens, great, right? That's a gift. So take that as a win if you're boring for long enough. So let them discard you. Like, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, and they're doing you a favor. But you can just go no contact as well. Like, you can literally just stop talking to them. And again, if you are an adult child of a narcissist, have all your ducks in a row before you go no contact. Like, make sure you have your birth certificate, your social insurance number, make sure that your cell phone plan is not shared with your parent, all that kind of stuff. Like, make sure everything's completely separated. And if you still have mail going to your parents' house, like, look into mail forwarding. I know that it's a thing in Canada and in the United States. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I'm sure there's some sort of option. Or, at least update your address on any mail that could possibly come to you at your parents' address. I was getting a lot of junk mail going to my late narcissistic mother's house back in the day, and she would use that as a way to get into contact with me. So, and it's very common with a lot of my clients that the mail goes to their house. So get your ducks in a row before you go no contact, because it's just going to be so much easier for you. And at the end of the day, if you have successfully gone no contact and then, I don't know, you slip, right? You make a bad judgment call. Something happens. You're in a vulnerable situation. The narcissist somehow becomes aware of this because they figure out things. It's interesting, right? Like the flying monkeys and the enablers. This is why you don't talk to them either. But let's say, you slip back into that enmeshment and you're back in contact with the narcissist. No shame. Don't beat yourself up. Look at it like a learning lesson. And you can literally just go back to being no contact all over again. Like, this is not a sobriety thing. It's no contact is not a number of days sober thing. It's just like you start prioritizing your sanity and removing yourself from the situation. If you did it once, you can do it again. Okay? So that's pretty much it. I know I still owe you episodes on gray rocking, narcissistic supply, and boundaries with narcissists. So those are coming. Stay tuned. Um, whenever they, whenever those episodes pop up, they pop up. You know how this works. And like I said earlier, if you need support in the meantime, I am offering one-on-one coaching. I also have a brand new program called the Shift Program starting very soon. It's going to be available mid to late April. You can get on the wait list as well. The link for any of these options is in the description. I also have an amazing community membership where you can connect with other people going through, probably exactly what you're going through, but maybe with different details. And we do live events each month. There's audio courses. There's, tons of support in my community as well. And that starts at less than $1 per day. If you're on a budget, it's a great option. So the link for all of that is in the description if you need that support in the meantime. I will wrap this up now. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll catch you in the next episode whenever it happens, which will probably be pretty soon. So stay tuned. See you next time. Bye.